Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. I hope you had a good weekend. I'll tell you about mine in a moment. It was delirious and off the charts. Macro thoughts, I like this quote: I'm only rich because I know when I'm wrong. I basically have survived by recognizing my mistakes. Home thoughts, stand up, paddle boarding at sunrise in Watamu, photographed by Wonders of Watamu. As I said, I've been delirious and feverish over the weekend via an infection in my mouth, which I can still feel. And in that delirium, I ended up reading a whole bunch of books. The Way to Paradise by Mario Vargas Llosa. This is the book about Paul Gauguin, the artist and his grandmother. It's a fantastic book. And in this book is at one point an exceptional passage devoted to the creation of Manao, tupapau, where we become party to the precise moment at which the painter strikes a match and surprises his lover in the midst of her nightmare. The sight would persist in his memory as one of those privileged visionary moments of his life in Tahiti, when he seemed to touch and live, though only for a few instants, what he had come in search of in the South Seas, the thing he would never find in Europe, where it had been extinguished by civilization. Painting about which is being referred, Paul Gauguin, The Spirit of the Dead Keep Watch. I then read Daniel Branch's Kenya in Between Hope and Despair, which I'd read before, but enjoyed rereading again, and also Dancing in Cambodia and At Large in Burma. This is Amitav Ghosh, a collection of essays, the first of which is about, it's made up of 3 parts, 2 longish travel essays of the book's title and a shorter Cambodian piece. That shorter Cambodian piece has an interview with Aung San Suu Kyi in the early optimistic days before what has happened now. It's very interesting. Then finally, if you haven't watched our little video medley of Savo West National Park and Finch Hattons, please take a look. Political reflections on lots happening. Angela Merkel was described before this election as the most powerful woman in a world of unstable men. Can't be wrong. Angela Merkel didn't make it to New York to hear President Trump tell other world leaders at the UN General Assembly that he would destroy North Korea if Rocket Man didn't cooperate. She was busy campaigning for what could and almost certainly will be her 4th term as Chancellor of Germany, keeping her post as the most powerful woman in a world filled with unstable men. However, the election had a curveball. Holger calls it a tectonic political shift. Populist AfD ascends to 3rd place with 13.5% in the German election, according to the first projection. Merkel's centre-right Christian Democrat-led alliance secured 33% of the vote, according to exit polls, about 12 points ahead of her main rivals. Martin Schulz's centre-left Social Democrats, which secured around 21 points, marking the poorest result for Germany's oldest party since 1949, and pushing it onto the opposition benches. Addressing CDU supporters in Berlin, a somewhat subdued-looking Merkel thanked voters who put their trust in us, despite recognizing that it was her party's worst result since 1945. And the euro has taken a little bit of fright of that. Kurds stick with the independence vote, never going back to Baghdad, says Barzani. Will go ahead with a referendum on independence on Monday because their partnership with Baghdad has failed, Kurdistan Regional Government President Masoud Barzani said on Sunday. In response, the Iraqi government asked the autonomous Kurdish region to hand over control of its international border posts, its international airports, and called on foreign countries to stop importing Kurdish crude oil. It asked the neighbouring countries and the countries of the world to deal exclusively with the federal government of Iraq in regards to entry posts and oil. This is actually quite a seismic geopolitical move, because you will recall it's not just about Iraq. Kurds are in Turkey, Kurds are in Syria, Kurds are in Iran. It would have a blowback effect into all those countries. In this photograph, Rohingya refugee children wash and swim in the river in Kuta Palong camp in Bangladesh. North Korea says rockets to US inevitable as US bombers fly off North Korean coast, calling Donald Trump Mr. Evil President Donald Trump. North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho's remarks to the United Nations General Assembly came hours after the US Air Force B-1B Lancer bombers escorted by fighters flew in international airspace over waters east of North Korea in a show of force the Pentagon said showed the range of military options available to Trump. Trump called Kim a madman on Friday, a day after Kim dubbed him a mentally deranged US dotard. Recalling Trump a mentally deranged person full of megalomania and complacency, trying to turn the UN into a gangster's nest. Said Trump himself was on a suicide mission after the US president had said Kim was on such a mission. President Ri said, warning that Pyongyang was ready to defend itself if the United States showed any sign of conducting a decapitating operation on our headquarters or military attack against our country. Now we are finally a few steps away from the final gate of completion of the state nuclear force, Ri said. The US bomber's flight was the farthest north of the demilitarized zone separating North and South Korea that any US fighter jet or bomber has flown in the 21st century. And this goes back to a comment I made in my piece, a screaming comes across the skies, when I said Kim is being ruthlessly logical and speaking the language his adversaries understand lucidly. And then Jamie tweeted, Jamie at Reuters, political discourse and diplomacy, Kim Jong-un is a rocket man, a madman. Kim Jong-un, Trump is a mentally deranged dotard. Going back to that point about the language. Vanity Fair, Christopher Hitchens has an interesting piece, Visit to a Small Planet. Even in former days, Korea was known as the Hermit Kingdom for its stubborn resistance to outsiders. If you wanted to create a totally isolated and hermetic society, Northern Korea, in the years after the 1953 armistice, would have been the place to start. It was bounded on two sides by the sea, and to the south by the impregnable and uncrossable DMZ, which divided it from South Korea. Its northern frontier consisted of a long stretch of China and a short stretch of Siberia. In other words, its only contiguous neighbors were Mao and Stalin. Look at this photograph of America's 3 heavy bombers flying wing to wing. This is a liftoff of Atlas V. And just look at the shape of that liftoff. Go back to my quotes from Thomas Pynchon. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice, guessed and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. And here Reuters Graphics has produced a look at all nuclear explosions since 1945. There's a short clip of Brexit, the movie. It is hilarious. Do take a look. Hours after Theresa May's showpiece speech, Moody's downgraded UK credit rating to AA2 from AA1, cites Brexit challenges. Conspirator Zero, amazing how a third of Twitter traffic about Catalonia is driven by 2 Kremlin-connected fugitives, best known for leaking secrets. International markets, euro dollar was down after the German election result. Let's have a look. Now trading at 119.12. Political risk is at the center political risk at the centre of the Euro project refers this big surge in the AFP. Currency markets: Euro dollar 119.12, dollar index 92.14, Japanese yen 112.21, Swiss franc 0.9707, the pound 135.46. So that Moody's downgrade didn't make much of a difference. Australian dollar 0.7959, India rupee 64.912, South Korean won 1130.95, Brazilian real 3.1251, Egyptian pound 17.6920, South African rand 13.2614. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart of that. We're still churning around these levels around 92. Gold, that hasn't had much of a lift from all this increasing rhetorical jousting. 12.92 last trading. Brent prices are nearly $10 a barrel higher at the start of the 2017 APAC oil conference in Singapore than at the same event last year. That's Javier Blas. Crude oil in New York is trading at $50.52. According to T Commodity, the WTI oil future still below its neckline of $52.40. A monthly close above this would confirm a head and shoulders bottom, he says. Sub-Saharan Africa, Sudan getting dropped from the travel ban comes as the UAE has been lobbying hard for them in DC in exchange for mercenary support in Yemen. Interesting. South African all shares up 10.24% this year. Dollar versus rand is 13.2614. KPMG feels the Gupta heat. Africa Confidential. The global auditor becomes the latest corporate casualty of a spiraling corruption scandal, claiming unexpectedly prominent scalps. In a grovelling public apology after 18 months of silence, auditing giant KPMG admitted that its senior executives in South Africa made mistakes and ignored the flags in working for the Gupta family. Firm also disowned a confidential report they prepared for the South African Revenue Services in 2014, which stated that former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan knew or ought to have known that a rogue investigations unit within the agency was spying on President Jacob Zuma and his allies. My piece over the weekend, which is under a separate podcast, is called Reputational Risk and a Cautionary Tale from South Africa. And I was just talking about how the bell had tolled for the PR firm Bell Pottinger, that KPMG had to decapitate its senior South African leadership, McKinsey's huge contract, which even they were alarmed at the amount they were receiving. And I was saying that, at least KPMG's guy had come to South Africa and apologized. And I was saying, by contrast, McKinsey, whose reputation has been built on the reputation of its intellectual capital, are still trying to find their moral compass. Egyptian pound 17.6920, Nigerian all share up 32.05% this year. Ghana keeps Tullow Oil PLC fields after maritime border ruling against the Ivory Coast. That's positive. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 35.67% this year. Investors wary as Tanzania moves to assert more control over mines. New laws and a crackdown on mining firms in Tanzania has slowed fresh investment in what has long been seen as one of Africa's brightest mining prospects, as companies assess the consequences of government efforts to claim a bigger slice of the pie. Takeover bids and exploration plans have been cancelled and workers laid off. The share prices of many firms listed in Australia, Britain, South Africa and Canada, with interests in Tanzania, have halved as the value of their investments tumble. The tumult follows the passage of 3 laws in July that, among other things, hike taxes on mineral exports, mandate a higher government stake in some mining operations, and force the construction of local smelters to bring Tanzania higher up the mining food chain. Because of the changes in legislation and the time being taken to implement new regulations, the sector has slowed down to a point where it is impacting exploration activities and our capacity to finalize the deal. This is Manao CEO Director of one minerals company said he is shutting his Tanzanian office because he believes the laws will make it illegal for him to recoup the cost of his many unsuccessful exploration projects against the few successful ones, and require him to share his valuable geological data with the government for free. There will be no nickel and gold exploration in Tanzania for the foreseeable future, the head of another company said. And, I've been speaking about this for a while. Minerals that may not be mobile, but the capital that funds the mines is Pricewaterhouse. Investors are saying on our risk radar, Tanzania has just gone a lot further down on the list. 11th of July, I wrote about this. I said recent events in both Tanzania and South Africa's mining sectors are tipping both jurisdictions into an uninvestable and twilight zone. President Magufuli has given a 24-month ultimatum to civil servants to move to Dodoma. Says those who don't will be rendered jobless. President Museveni tweeted, "Stay healthy, avoid reckless sex. Sex must be at the right time with the right partner. Casual sex is a death sentence for you." Mr. Bazabose tweeted, "Kinshasa by night. Ron Point, Forest Gone, Kinshasa." The Economist, I take you back to the weekend when they had, I think it was a few days ago when they had this article, "What makes for an acceptable election?" That is the question Kenyans must consider during the next month or so. Then I went back to a tweet from NTV Kenya tweeting that the CJ, David Maraga, had said, "We'll annul the poll again if the law is breached." Kenya's chief prosecutor has ordered the police and anti-corruption agency to investigate the country's election commission for alleged irregularities and illegalities. Given what the Chief Justice has already pronounced will annul the poll again if the law is breached, I think it's difficult to see how the IEBC meets that threshold as currently constituted. The opposition, however, are, in my opinion, looking for the nuclear option. They are short of cash, and folks are fatigued. That nuclear option is a boycott, which I think is where they're going to go. I did an interview with David Ohana, the managing director, ex-paratrooper of Kenol Kobel. Very interesting it is too. Take a listen. Kenol Kobel is just shy of a record high and reported a startling 96.648% gain in first half sales. Take a look at the results, share data, it's all there. He's bullish, looking for 20. Kenya shilling 103.195. Nairobi all share up 24.43% year to date. NSE 20 up 18.15% year to date. Nakumatt and Tuskegee could list on the NSE after merger. I think that's a pipe dream. There's just too much debt. Flame Tree Group announced its acquisition of Polyplay, a major commercial playground equipment manufacturer and distributor. Once again, thank you for stopping by.